What's up guys, my name is Tony and today I'm going to give you a quick and painless guide to installing Arch Linux. This installation is going to be for UEFI Systems. If you have a computer that was built within the last 8 years or so, you're probably on a UEFI system. If you don't know, just make sure you see this screen when you load up your Arch ISO. If you aren't on a UEFI system, go ahead and pause the video and check out the link in the description about legacy boot systems. To begin the installation, our very first step is to hit enter or wait for this menu to time out. While the system begins booting, I'm going to point you guys in the direction of the left side of my screen where I have the Arch Linux installation guide. This guide is very well written and I highly suggest you use it to follow along with this tutorial. A link will be provided to it in the description. Alright, I'm going to scroll past this portion of the pre-installation section because I'm assuming you already have the ISO image prepared on an installation medium such as a USB drive and you've already booted into it. And the first thing you see is this scary terminal. And you're ready to shut off the machine and reinstall Ubuntu and move on with your life. But don't worry, if you follow this guide, I promise you will no longer be allergic to the terminal and you'll eventually be confident enough to install Arch Linux on your own hardware and tell all your friends that you use Arch by the way. If you are on a US keyboard, you can skip the pre-installation step completely. If you aren't on a US keyboard, the pre-installation step that is important for you is to load your key map. So, for example, if you want to load the French key map, you will type load keys FR. I am on a US keyboard, so I will have to reload my US keys by typing load keys US. The first step of the installation is to connect to the internet. I am on a virtual machine, so I do have an Ethernet connection. I highly recommend you plug in your machine using an Ethernet cable for simplicity. If you do not have access to an Ethernet connection, you can check out the IWCTL guide to set up Wi-Fi, which is in the Arch Linux installation wiki and also linked in the description. To confirm my Ethernet connection, I'm going to ping archlinux.org. And we have a confirmed Ethernet connection. So in order to cancel any command in the terminal, just hit Control-C and it'll quit the command. So before we jump right into the installation, I'm going to give you a couple tips on the terminal. One was the Control-C to quit any command. Another one is going to be Control-L to clear the terminal. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to double the font size. In order to do that, I'm going to type set font -D. Now we're going to scroll down to the section of the wiki for partitioning the disks. In this example, they recommend to use this Fdisk tool. I have learned over the years that a more user-friendly tool is better for me, and that is called Cfdisk. So we're going to type Cfdisk and hit enter. And we see we're prompted to select a label type. Now we are on a UEFI system, so we're going to select GPT. You might not see a screen that looks exactly like this. You may see something that looks more like this. So if your system looks like this, it means you have some other thing installed on your hard drive, maybe Windows, maybe another Linux distribution. But today we're going to assume that you want to delete everything on your hard drive and install Arch Linux fresh onto your system. So what we're going to do is we're just going to use the arrow keys to delete all of these partitions. With the down arrow, delete, and delete again, and hit right, yes. And this is the most important part. Make sure that you are ready to be gone with all of this data and hit enter. From this screen, we're ready to set up our new partitions. We're going to hit enter on a new partition and type in 1G for 1 gigabyte. And that's going to be our boot partition on dev SDA1. For our next partition, we're going to hit down, enter, and type in 4Gs for 4 gigabytes for our swap partition of dev SDA2. This ensures that if our computer runs out of memory, it will use our swap partition instead of crashing. Lastly, we'll use the down arrow key once again, hit enter one more time, specify our third partition using the rest of the space. This will be our file system partition of dev SDA3. Using the arrow keys again, we're going to navigate to right, hit enter, type yes, enter, and then hit enter on quit. And we're back at the beautiful terminal. So we'll go ahead and clear the terminal with Control-L, and we'll type in lsblk to confirm our partitions were correctly created. And as we see here, they are. Now it's time to format the partitions. So we'll scroll down to 1.10 And we will go ahead and type mkfs.ext4/dev/sda3. And that's going to make the ext4 file extension to our root partition. Now we're going to go ahead and type mkfs.fat-f32/dev/sda1. And that is for our boot partition. Lastly, we're going to type mkswap/dev/sda2. Now it's time to mount the file systems. Firstly, we'll type mount/dev/sda3 space mnt. Then we need to mount our boot partition, but the boot directory hasn't been created yet, so we'll create it by typing mkdir-p for parent mnt/boot/UEFI. And we'll go ahead and mount that by typing mount/dev/sda1/mnt/boot/UEFI. And lastly, for the easy part, we're going to type in swap-on/deb/sda2. And to confirm all of this, we're going to do lsblk one more time, and we're going to see we have sda1 as mount boot EFI, we have our swap partition on, and we have our root partition mounted on mnt. Alright, I feel like I've said this 30 times in this video already, but I'll say it again. It's finally time to install Arch Linux. So we're going to clear the terminal, and we are going to type pacstrap/mnt, and now we need to look for the packages that they recommend. And they recommend using base, Linux firmware, and if you have a new-ish sound card, you're going to want to include soft firmware. And now we want some other fun stuff. To actually install packages from the Arch Linux user repository, which is the main reason to use Arch Linux besides telling your friends you use Arch, by the way, we're going to have to add base devil. And we're also going to need GRUB as a bootloader and EFI boot manager because we are on a UEFI system. And in order to ensure that the network is automatically configured when we start the machine, we will install network manager. And because I said so, install Vim. So these are all the packages we need for install. So go ahead and hit enter. And that might take a while to finish, so I will see you shortly. Alright, so that finished, and it only took me about 60 seconds here, which is awesome. So we'll go ahead and scroll down to the next section regarding generating the Fstab. So we'll go ahead and clear the terminal, and we will go ahead and type gen fstab/mnt. And we are going to visually confirm that our file system tab looks correct. As we can see, it does look correct because our boot, our swap, and our root partition are all correlated with their correct UUIDs. So we're going to go ahead and write this output to our fstab file by typing gen fstab-u/mnt right bracket mnt etc fstab. Alright, and what that does is that will write the output of the gen fstab-u command to our mnt etc fstab file. And to go a little bit deeper on that, when your system loads up, it will look at the fstab file and it will do what we basically did earlier by mounting all the drives manually, but it'll do that automatically. Alright, now it's time to chroot into the new system by typing arch-chroot/mnt. And we're going to clear the terminal once again. So we scroll down here a little bit and we see that we're in the time section. And I'll type in date to confirm that that is off. So we do want to correct that by typing ln-sf/user/share/zoneinfo. And this is where you're going to change it to your region, your city. And for my personal situation, I'm located in America, in Los Angeles. So I'm going to go ahead and link that to Etsy local time. And to confirm that that worked, I'll type in date again. As you can see, the date matches my system clock outside of my virtual machine, so we're good to go. Lastly, we're going to run hwclock --systochc, and that's going to sync the hardware clock with our system clock. So this next part, localization, is probably where most people give up on the installation because it's a little bit complicated. But don't worry, just follow along and I'm going to make it easy for you guys. So we'll scroll down to the localization section and we'll clear the terminal and we're going to type vim/etsy/locale.gen. And this will open up the file that has all the different locales that are available to us in our system. So we can navigate this file with the arrow keys or J and K, and we can go down until we find our specific locale. Once you find your specific locale, you're going to navigate to the hashtag and hit delete. And we're going to hit :WQ to write and quit out of the file and hit enter. And as you can see, Etsy locale gen has been written to. So we're going to run locale-gen and it'll generate the locale. And as we see here, it generated n_us.utf-8 completely. So we need to specify our locale in our locale.conf file because some programs are going to check that file as well. So we'll clear the terminal one more time with Control L and we'll go ahead and type echo !lang equals n_us.utf-8 greater than to write it to this file etsy/locale.conf. To verify that's there, we'll type in cat etsy/locale.conf and there it is, lang NUS UTF-8. And we are almost done with the Arch installation. So if you changed your key map in the beginning of this video to something like the French key map, this is where you were going to have to do it permanently. So for example, if you changed it to DE Latin, you're going to type echo !keymap equals DE-Latin1 greater than Etsy vconsole.conf. But we're not going to do that because we're using a US key map and most of you are using a US key map too, so go ahead and skip that part. And we can move on to the network configuration. In order to set up our host name, we're going to type echo and we're going to put our host name here. And for me, I'm going to choose arch-btw because I use Arch, by the way. And we're going to end the quotes and put greater than Etsy hostname. Now we're going to go ahead and create a password for our root user by typing password, PASSWD. And for me, I'm going to use my super secure password of 1234. And I'm going to retype that as 1234. All right. Moving on, we're going to go ahead and create our first user, and this is going to be user add-m-g, capital G for the group, wheel, and it's going to be -s bin bash, and I'm going to name it Tony. And now I'm going to set the password for Tony by typing in PASSWD Tony, and this one's going to be super secure 1234 1234. Now, in order to give Tony permissions to access sudo, I'm going to go ahead and type in editor equals vim vi sudo, and I will search for the wheel key by typing /wheel. And if you don't want to do /wheel, you can scroll up and down this file with the up arrows and the down arrows respectively. But once you get to this line that says uncomment to allow members of the group wheel to execute any command, we're going to go to the beginning of this line and we're going to delete the first two characters so that this line is no longer commented. We're going to hit escape :WQ so we can write and quit the file and hit enter. So in order to confirm that this worked, we're going to switch into the Tony user that I created by typing su Tony. Now we're in Tony's account, so we're going to type in sudo pacman-syu to confirm that we have sudo privileges. And it looks like it works, so make sure to type your password in 1234 and hit enter. And it looks like we're all up to sync. Alright, now that we have set up sudo on our user, we can type exit to go back into the root as root. And we're on one of the last steps before we can reboot our system. The first step is to enable core system use services. The only one we're going to enable today is Network Manager, and we're going to clear the terminal and do that by typing systemctl enable N network M manager, one word. And as you can see, the symlinks were created, so that is now enabled. Alright, the last step before rebooting is to set up our bootloader. And we did install grub in our packstrap install command, so all we need to do is type grub-install/dev/sda. And as you can see, grub has been installed. But we do need to configure it first, so we're going to do that by typing grub-mkconfig-o/boot/grub/grub.cfg. And there you go, we have grub configured. We can go ahead and ignore that error about the grub disable prober because we don't have that enabled. That is only something you need to worry about if you are dual booting, which we're not doing. So at this point we can go ahead and type exit to get us back into that colored prompt, and we can go ahead and unmount all the drives by typing umount-a, and we're going to go ahead and reboot. And now you can see we're in Arch Linux. So we're going to go ahead and hit enter to load up into Arch Linux. And we are prompted with this beautiful, beautiful Arch Linux login screen. So go ahead and type the name of the user that you created and the password. And we are logged into Arch, by the way. So what we're going to do now to verify that the network manager is working is just type ping archlinux.org one more time. And yep, it's working. So we'll go ahead and quit out of that with Control-C, and we're ready to install a desktop environment. And for a basic desktop environment, I recommend Cinnamon. So we're going to go ahead and type in sudo pacman-s cinnamon lightdm lightdm-gtk-greeter exorg and hit enter. We'll type in our password. And this is a lot of packages here, so we're just going to hit enter on all the defaults and hit enter on all the defaults, and you see that's going to be a 978 megabyte download with 320 packages. So I will see you in a minute. Alright, so that's complete, but we do want to add a few more utilities before we boot into our desktop environment so that it is useful. So we're going to want a terminal emulator so you don't get locked out of your system. We're going to clear the terminal one more time and type in sudo pacman-s alacrity. And we do want a web browser, so we're going to type in Firefox. And that should be good to go, so we'll go ahead and hit enter on that. And the defaults, hit enter on all the defaults. And that's going to be a pretty big file as well because we do have Firefox in there, so we'll let that one finish. Alright, now that that's done, all we need to do is enable our desktop greeter by typing systemctl enable, and we want to do it now, so we'll do --now lightdm. And we need to have our password in here, and there we go. Beautiful. Beautiful lightdm. So type in your password one more time, hit enter to log in, and we are in our beautiful Cinnamon desktop environment. So we can open up this, and we can type in alacrity or click on alacrity. Oh, there is the beautiful terminal. Alright, so it wouldn't be a proper Arch installation guide without doing the final step, which is sudo pacman-s neofetch --neofetch. Type the password in, hit enter, and there we go. Arch Linux is installed, and you are ready to tell your friends that you use Arch, by the way.